So to begin with, I'd like to start with asking, why is it that pursuing a postgraduate study is becoming a bigger and bigger trend, especially for studies overseas? Nishtha, would you want to give your views on that?
I mean, I think study abroad as a trend, I do see somewhat it's a cyclical thing. When Indian economy is booming and maybe there are some like visa-like issues or Trump factor playing abroad, then of course we see a shift in interest from one country to another. But overall, I believe because given the Indian ambition population, there are so many people who want to go abroad and pursue a career in these more cutting edge roles. And also I think of course India is doing great as well, but if someone is harboring ambition of postgraduate education, and given the competition in India, the kind of competitive exams we have, it's not possible to accommodate all those people. So I think there are always that supply and demand factor also plays in. But since my time, I myself went on to study at UIUC for my master's in computer science and then MBA at NYU. I see a lot of Indians in these top universities, and it's a good thing to see, I believe.
Right. So, we're seeing that now, deciding to study in a country is not an easy decision. And so what are the key factors that you think students should be looking at while deciding which country to study in?
Right. I think one of the biggest thing as a career coach also, I request.
Can you hear me? Is this clear?
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, Chandni, was the question for me?
Yeah, we'll have Arks maybe answer this one for us.
Sure.
Chandni, you're asking what are the key factors that one has to look at going abroad or looking at a post-graduation? Is that this, because it was
Yes.
not very clear? Yeah.
Yes,
thanks.
Absolutely. That's the question.
See, first and foremost, like Nishtha has correctly said, I think the opportunities that are available in India are limited, and it also look at a lot of competition in India itself. I'm not saying there is no competition outside, but the first thing that we need to realize is there was a time when everybody looked at going only to an MS to go to the US or a couple of places, but today the entire world is opened up for us, whether it's Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, etc. kind of thing. So when one looks at first and foremost, whether or not you want to pursue your post graduation, why would you want to pursue your post graduation? I think that is a very, very important factor that one has to look into mind, because there are various reasons people think of. One is for migration itself. People want to get jobs outside, they want to get out of India, etc., various reasons, or they're not getting the kind of, for example, getting into an IIM or an IIT is so difficult, but getting into, let's say, a UG course in maybe US or in Europe is a little more easier than, let's say, in India IITs. So the key factor is first to figure out what is the reason why one wants to go for it. Is it learning? Is it knowledge? Is it job? Is it because I'm not getting here? That's very, very important for somebody to look at it. The second key factor, probably Jainesh will come back and talk about it, is the kind of money that is required to kind of pursue that education. For example, if you want to pursue a post-graduation in India in the MTech side or the MS side, it will cost you less than probably 10 lakhs. Whereas the same thing going to US could cost you 500 crore, or it could be depending on, of course, public or a private university. So therefore, the funding that one has is also very, very important. The third thing, even if one wants to go abroad, in fact, there are two types of people. One, people who just want to go abroad for making sure that they want to go abroad. But people like Nishtha, who have gone to UIUC, I mean, University of Urbana-Champaign is a absolutely top 5 schools. Going to that, the kind of learning that one gets, the kind of education that one is looking forward to, do you also look at your background, in fact, you started off, Chandini, about profile. Do you have the profile to be even aiming for such a kind of thing? I'm not saying you don't aim, but if I want to aim for a Harvard or a Wharton or a NY Stern, what do I do to make sure that this journey of mine, including my profile, also can get me even a call from that place. So in that sense, these are the 3-4 very, very basic characteristics that I would look at, or factors I would look at even before deciding whether I want to go abroad or India.
Correct. And, like you very rightly pointed out, I think one of the key decision-making points for students and parents is the money. And there is a big variance between country to country, and also between an India to overseas decision that one is making. So Janish, how much do you think students should be saving before studying abroad? And what are the options available today for them to be able to pay for their college education?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just touch a little bit upon the answer that Aks you gave about how do you decide, how do you pick which destination, I think it will be a very good segue into the question that you just asked. And there are several intangibles that Aks you alluded to. You need to think about what's your ultimate goal. It's difficult to estimate in terms of numbers what those things would amount to. However, I would recommend that every student does an opportunity cost analysis. And it's fairly mathematical. Lay out a spreadsheet. On one row, you can talk about, you should list down what's your expected, what's your career that you want to pursue in India. So essentially, you're comparing your career post and overseas degree to the other opportunity, which is pursuing a career in India after an education in India. So the first, your opportunity cost is what your career output would have been in terms of, if I just talk about money here, right? What's your expected income over, let's say, the next 10 years, having not pursued any additional degree, any postgrad degree, and having just pursued your degree in India and working in India. The next row should be your cost of studying in various possible destinations. And destinations will vary across college ranking, country. So a top college in Europe is cheaper when compared to a top college in US, which is the most expensive. Somewhere in the middle, you'll find Australia and Canada, some of these other countries. So it's very important to put that cost section, and we'll talk about how to finance that cost in just a couple of minutes. Then you should also look at what's the expected income, which is again a function of the college and the country and the course that you're going to target. And obviously a function of how well you do there and how well you are able to hone your personality. So, and there's data available, and these are not just darts on the wall that you throw. These are not random assumptions. There's data available, and there are able counselors who will be able to guide you as to what the appropriate figures are. That you should be able to take these inputs and create this whole opportunity cost analysis for yourself. And then the question is, on the basis your your investment is your net opportunity cost of pursuing this overseas degree, which is you should subtract the expected earning loss that you would have had, the earnings that you would have had otherwise had you not pursued your overseas education, the net cost of actually going for that education, that's your investment. As a result of that investment, what returns are you getting? I know I'm probably putting a very mathematical version of it. I think this is a very objective way of looking at it.
That's great. Yeah. No, it has to be evaluated very extensively. So I think, sharing this in details is going to be very helpful for all those who are viewing us.
Except that all decisions are not as objective as they are supposed to be, by the way. A lot of them are, gut feel kind of things also. Mujhe karna hai types.
Yeah, emotional even, right? So, and you're also led by your peers, your seniors, your relatives. These are intangibles and things that are difficult to quantify. But I think, given the enormity of the decision, we just owe it to ourselves to just do the spreadsheet analysis and have this be a key input in that decision making, and not be a end all be all.
If I may add to it, if I may, we have had candidates who had admits from Columbia University. Now we know that Columbia is not known for the financial aid. So then some of them look at then the cost, and then they are thinking that no, I can't attend, let me go to this other university. So it's like, why apply to those universities if you cannot afford at that point of time? So a simple opportunity cost analysis, or even a break-even analysis, like how many years it's going to take you to kind of recover that money itself. A simple analysis, I think, should be done at the time of evaluating the universities itself. I completely agree.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And now, actually, to answer the question that Chandni asked me, I took a long segue and talked about something else entirely. Right. So now talking about how to think about financing, right? So there are different ways. So first and foremost, this free money, which is scholarships. And of scholarships in the postgraduate space, if we're targeting US of all countries, the opportunities are very few and far between, but they're there. Right. So I remember reading in Nisha, your profile, that you got a few scholarships yourself. I think it'll be good to hear for the students to hear your story about that particular aspect. But the scholarships are there, right? And you have to research, you have to plan in advance, apply, do a good job in applying. It's, a lakh here, 5 lakhs there. There are interest-free loans that you can get from Tata. There's another 5 lakh, 10 lakh interest-free loan that you can get from Narottam Seksarai Foundation. Just a couple of options that come to my mind a bit off the head. If you're going for non-STEM disciplines, there's Nehru Fulbright scholarships. There's a whole series of them given out to multiple scholars every year, and that's a great tag on your resume as well. In other countries and in other disciplines, I remember there's a Dhirubhai Ambani scholarship for a couple of Stanford B School grads every year from India, and that values to about 1.25 crores per person. So that's a huge amount that foundation is giving out per person as scholarships. Scholarships is one. The second is,
But is there a place, Janish, just as an extension to this, where students can comprehensively find out about what are the scholarship options for them and read up about it? One consolidated place of scholarships information.
Yeah, actually, we have done some of this homework on our website, Gyandhan, and created a scholarship section where students can find the scholarships by different parameters. We try to put in some effort in keeping that database updated, but students will have to do their homework as well, do their primary research as well. But I think our website's scholarship section should be a decent starting point for the students. Yeah. So scholarships is one. Second is, you should also look at obviously personal savings is big. So, but I'll keep that as a buffer. So let's not talk about it for a second. Parents' savings, do not touch that. That's something that you should consider taboo when you're planning for your studies abroad. You should try and plan so that you can. Exactly. And that's there for a rainy day. That may come in handy. Maybe perhaps if something else doesn't work out. Then another source of income that another source of funding that you'll be able to have access to is your part-time work. The income that you'll earn in your part-time work varies from country to country, and also the probability of landing a part-time gig varies from university to university. So we have done some work, and there are other databases available that will tell you as a function of the program and the university that you're applying to, how many RA-ships and how many TA-ships did these universities give out last year, and a decent percentage of those are actually given out to Indian students, proportionate percentage really. So that could be another factor. So you earn around $12 to $15 per hour, 20 hours per week. So that's decent additional income that you can add on in your planning stage. Then there's education loans, which I think is one of the key enablers and one of the key drivers as to why the number of students studying abroad has increased from India. I fundamentally believe, and Credila is one of the pioneers in this, having scaled the overseas education offerings to an amazing level from when they started. And these are really key enablers to students, and education loan will form a bulk of your funding. Look at it as an investment, right? So it's something you should look at the cost that you pay in terms of interest as a part of the spreadsheet calculation that we were talking about earlier. So, so these are the key sources, and finally, obviously, your savings will make up the rest.
Right, absolutely. So, coming to profile evaluation and, what are the aspects that universities look at? Soumya, you're dealing with thousands of students at Jamboree. What are the key aspects that universities are looking at while evaluating applications?
Hello, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are now. Yes.
Okay, so when you're talking of higher education, so there are obviously two major branches of higher education when you look in higher education post your undergraduate degrees. One is your the MBA suite of things, and the other is the master's suite. Okay, so when you're talking of the master's suite, and when you are trying to do a master's program after your undergraduation, obviously you have the university will first look at why you want to do the masters. Okay, what is the specific interest you want? You have to do that masters, and what have you done to justify that your interest? Okay. So to that extent, your academic performance in your undergraduate program as well as anything which you have done. So we loosely call it, but there's not too much fundamental research which goes on. But you can look at what kind of projects, internships, and stuff like that which you have done. So that kind of builds the interest around the subject, demonstrated interest around the subject where you want to do a master's. So that is obviously the first thing the university is going to look at. Okay, your academics and your demonstrated interest in the subject where you want to do a higher education in. Okay, then because it's an academic, ultimately you're going for higher education. We get a lot of questions, what kind of extracurricular and all of that. But when you're trying to do a master's, you are going for higher education. So your academic credentials is the most important. Okay, and then you can also put in somebody who wants to really strengthen it up, the academic credentials which he or she may have, can strengthen it by a good GRE or a GMAT score, and that can help them to build their profile. Okay, the academic profile. Then comes the other part of you want to showcase some of your other parts of your personality through other kind of work which you have done. Okay, which is something which you have done in extracurricular activities. So that's the for masters. For MBA, it is a little more diverse. Okay, and we have to understand that MBA. So the typical MBA programs in the US are people with 3+ years work ex, 4+ years work ex. So there you need to also show what kind of experience you had at your work. Okay. Or if you are going for the MIN programs, then you have to show what kind of work you've done in college. So the MBA is little more. You can be a little more diverse, so you can showcase the kind of co-curricular activities you have done, which is showing your interest in some of the areas which strengthens your application as an MBA applicant, but also other areas where you have show leadership qualities and stuff like that. So it's MBA is a little more diverse, but master's academics is most important, and a good GRE GMAT score definitely helps in both the cases, both not only in terms of selection but in terms of scholarships also.
Right. So for an MBA, since work experience is required by most universities, do they also look at the relevance of what work you have done and therefore what course you're planning to pursue as an extension? Is that considered?
Let
Yes
me
and
answer
no.
this question. In fact, Shama,
Yes,
continue.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
There are two things I will say, Chandini, because it's a complete. Yeah, thanks, Shama. There are two things because we have a lot of Delhi University students. I think one very interesting information to be given to all of them is that when you are in the pre-final year or the final year of your degree, you can apply to a deferred program of Harvards, the Yales, the Stanfords, the London Business Schools, and in India itself, our own Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. That's point number one. So in that sense, my simple answer for you, Chandini, when you said, is it relevant experience that I need? Yes, of course, that's the answer, correct. But very important to even note that when you are in the final year, it is true that there was a time, not even 7-8 years back, if you did not have a 3-year work experience, you were not even eligible to apply to this MBA degree, especially in the US. Now, even in the US, even in the best of the colleges, you can apply even when you are in the final year or the pre-final year of your graduation. In fact, I believe that students of Delhi University have an edge because they already have a very strong 10th score. Even if not 10th score, I know that they have a very strong 12th score, because that's the reason why otherwise they would not even get into DU in the first place, most of them at least. That is one. Like Shamo has said correctly, if you don't have a relevant experience, the 3 years experience, he talked about profile, you also talked about profile. Extracurricular activities is only one part of that, but the profile is about the job that you have done, or the internships that you have taken up, or the certifications that you can showcase in the relevant area of what you want to pursue tomorrow. Like when you talk about MBA, for example, that is something which is my forte too. I need to be able to showcase that, hey, I have certain skills. I believe that MBA is what I will get, whatever I want to get. What is it that I'm missing? The skills I can showcase not only in my 10th, 12th and degree marks, but also in all the work experience that I have done, internships or certifications that I've come in. The skill set difference is where obviously you need to demonstrate that I'm really interested in that business school or master's degree. In fact, I don't know whether Nishtha will agree with me. If you are, for example, thinking of a master's in science, MS, if you can showcase certain research abilities or research papers, I think your candidature will be far higher than whatever scores that you have shown, or your GRE or GMAT scores for that matter. That's what I would very clearly think, Chandini.
Correct. Nishtha, just building on this same thing a little further.
I want to, Chandini, can I come in? I just wanted to answer that question which you had asked about. See, let's understand why one goes and does an MBA. Okay, so the most popular reason for people who are in jobs to do an MBA is to upskill themselves and get into the next level of their careers, or to change roles. So that's the kind of reason why people, at least people who are in jobs, are going to do MBAs. Okay, so when your primary motivation is also to change. So we see a lot of people who are from the IT sector want to get into finance and banking. Okay, so that's a very common aspiration. Okay, so here, so when there is no relevance to the job which I have done previous to my MBA, to the job I want to, which I'm aspiring for. So an MBA is also a place where I'm going to learn skills which I didn't learn in my undergraduate. I'm going to learn business skills, while I may have graduated in the computer science or economics or in English, but I learned business skills as a part of my MBA, and that's why it gets me ready for the next phase of my career. Okay, so until unless we are going for a very specialized masters, there are masters program in business analytics, okay, or there are masters programs in data sciences. Okay, so some of these which also are, they're called their business programs now. They're with the STEM business MBA courses. There are a lot of these STEM MBA courses which come, which, so there are some relevance to the previous experience may have, but in general, why they want a job experience is because you have had some practical exposure in working in an organization, not necessarily in the role which you want to be after you graduate. So that actually defeats the entire purpose of why I want to go and do an MBA.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think in the last 1 year also, a lot of students are wondering, is the evaluation criteria really changing in the whole admission process? Because many universities, for example, are not asking for scores. So Nishtha, from that perspective, the COVID times, as we call it, has that brought in a change in the way the the universities are looking at your complete application, and in terms of also building your profile? Are there any changes that you're suggesting to the students?
Sure. I think last year was very exceptional, and we also observed there was a lot of uncertainty, not just for the students, but also for the universities, right? Because people who had admissions for fall 2020 sessions, they were not going to come, and they were all requesting to defer their admission, and rightly so, because they could not come and they could not land into these countries itself. So universities did not have much option but to offer those deferral to the students, which meant a lot of them deferred their admits to fall 2021, which meant a lot, like a big chunk of the seats was already filled for fall 2021. So that became a question mark that we were not really sure that how many seats are left for fall 2021 applicants.
Right.
And again, because pandemic situation now as it's unfolding, I mean, touch wood, we have the vaccination now. Hopefully the fall 21 session will start in person, but it was not clear just like a couple of months ago. So universities were still not sure whether fall 2021 will go fully normally. So what should they do? So they were relaxing the criteria to encourage more applicants, because anybody who had the luxury of waiting had decided to wait, that let's see how the situation unfolds, and I will probably apply next year. I think only those candidates were applying who were like, no, I have to go this year itself, in whatever circumstances. So I think everyone was hedging their bets. Universities were thinking like, let me relax the criteria, because a lot of MBA candidates, there are many aspirants who are not able to apply because of bad GMAT score, or they are just not finding time along with their full-time jobs to take the GMAT. So a lot of, and including very, very top schools in US, which is a very exceptional thing that they allowed GMAT to be waived. So it's an interesting time we are living in. Let's see. But I think if things fall back normally, maybe the competition would be higher in coming few years, because all those candidates who are waiting all these years are going to apply in next couple of years. So let's see. But I think COVID, my only advice to students was focus on the long term. Like I was in Wall Street when the 2008 recession happened. Like I was at Citigroup when Lehman went bankrupt, right? So it was a very, very crazy time. These cycles happen. Eventually, I think you should focus on your long-term career goal and think of where am I trying to get. And as I always say, masters or MBA is not the end goal. It's a path towards something. What is that goal for you? Figure that out. And if you think masters or MBA is the right thing for you, go for it. In the long term, I think it all works out. But if you are just looking at it as an opportunity for something as short-term gain, and you're not really clear on what's my end goal here, then you may be caught in a bad position, because we all knew the H-1B uncertainty. Trump did a lot of drama. He revoked H-1Bs. He put a halt on issuance of new H-1Bs. That is causing a lot of uncertainty in the mind of people who are applying for US. But if I'm focused on long term, and if I know that I'm skilling myself, and no matter what, I will be able to find a job, if not US, maybe some other country, then you are in safe hands. There's nothing to worry. So I always, as a career coach, my first advice to student is, I'm not going to push you into study abroad dream. Pursue it if it makes sense for you. It may not make sense for you, and that's okay too.
And, Jenish, talking about COVID times, there were also a lot of concerns about how am I going to get my funding, because, going to a bank physically, etc., was becoming a problem, or even interacting with anybody one-to-one, giving documents. So what change have you seen in this segment in the last few months? And would you want to just advise students on how they can go about this?
Absolutely. Most of the lenders, with maybe one, we work with multiple lenders on our platform, except one. All of them have redesigned their process for it to be so that it's very low touch now. If we take the example of Credila, HDFC Credila does not require physical interaction for a loan to be approved. And this is something that a lot of the other lenders have also been able to emulate in some form or fashion. In fact, with a couple of lenders, what we have done is, because they have their mind set on the customers visiting their branches, basically taken an exception approval where my teammates go to customers' homes with all the necessary precautions. They pick up documents and then ferry them over to the bank side. And we've gotten the necessary approvals to be able to do that. So most of the lenders you'll find, and I believe these innovations will live on even after these times, because these are economically, they make sense for the lenders. They're economically beneficial to them. They reduce their costs by reducing physical interaction. So I believe the process of getting an education loan has become easier, and these innovations will not only live on but also improve on further.
And while we talk about profile and from a student perspective how their profile should be, when we're looking at universities, a typical way, Soumya, that a university is judged by its ranking. But is that really the right way of judging which university one wants to go to, or is it also a course evaluation and multiple other factors that come into play while making this decision?
Yeah, I think the answer is in your question, that that's not the only way, because there is also quite a, as far as rankings, there are quite a few rankings. Which rankings you follow? A Financial Times ranking, US ranking? What ranking will you follow? So there's quite a few
Exactly, and that's
rankings
where
out
the
there.
confusion lies.
So there is that debate. Then the other thing is, as I think Nishtha and Jainesh has already said, that if there is a other thing about what's the so what is the course you want to follow, how good is the particular course you want to follow in that particular university, what kind of, so where is it located, if you get an internship in and around that place, so will it give you practical exposure, so is it possible to get some hands-on experience, and also what's the overall cost. So when I say overall cost, not only the fees, but what kind of scholarships, what kind of assistantships, what kind of other, what's the housing cost in that particular. So between two cities, the housing cost can be completely different, right? So all of that needs to be factored in, and we know of students. Yeah, so that's what typically we see when students come in. They will go by rankings. They have the aspirations to the best universities, and that is defined by the rankings. So as I was saying, I think we missed out that part, that we have seen students who have given up an admission offer at a so-called higher ranked university to go to a little lower ranked university because it made more financial sense, and the entire business of the return on investment, what according to that student was better there. Okay, I think that's, you need to factor that in, and not go blindly by rankings. So a little bit of research, touching base with alumni, touching with professors, figuring out what kind of courses, internships, all of that. Ultimately it's a investment for a lifetime. So when you do an investment for a lifetime, you need to be you have to do your research well, and not just go by some reports. They are good. You at least get to know the names of the top 50. Some of us may not know the name of the top 50, but within the top 50, top 100, which one to choose, which one is best for you, you need to. That's why experienced counselors come into play, where they can guide because of their experience and their knowledge of handling so many students of so many years. They come into play to guide. That's where some amount of guidance may also help.
Right. And I see students with this constant decision that they're trying to fight against and see, should I study in India, should I do my MBA especially in India, or should I do that abroad? There's a big variance in cost, of course, that comes into play. How would you guide a student? Because from a perspective of test taking, with the GMAT now being acceptable with many institutes in India also, the journey is fairly the same till a certain point. So they do have that option open in front of them. What would you advise to students? How should they really go about making this decision?
In fact, very interestingly, what the question asked is, should I write CAT or should I write GMAT? Nobody asks whether they want to go abroad or whether they want to study in India. Very strange but true. In fact, the question that matters really is what you just asked. Do I want to do it in India? Do I want to do it abroad? That's a broad idea. The way I look at it is, I think what Shamo said, I will just take it up from here. It's not about India or abroad. It's about, finally, there are lots of things, a lot of factors involved, including your own background that you are looking at. I said this before and I'm saying it again. A lot of people think of going abroad especially on the management side, simply because they know that it's getting into an IIM is not easy.
Yeah.
Or so they think. I'm not saying it is not easy actually, but that is the thinking. When they look at an exam like CAT, and side by side, when they look at an exam like a GMAT, especially on the quantitative aptitude side, I'm getting into nitty-gritty a little more, they feel that, yaar, ye to main kar sakta hu, ye to samajh mein hi nahi aa raha hai. And in that sense of the word, they start taking a decision, maybe I want to go abroad. Going abroad also, if you go to the United Kingdom, UK, if you don't go to a LBS or an Imperial School or a SAID business school or a Cambridge couple of or an Oxford kind of things, and you go to the tons of other business schools which are there in UK also, which are one single storied business schools there also, as much as we have in India, you're going to have an ROI of 0 almost. You will just go there, spend that amount of money, maybe 40, 50, 70, 80 lakhs, and you come back here, you don't even have got job here because nobody recognizes your degree there almost of that degree, nor you will get a job there because you have really learned nothing. You have learned almost nothing. So coming to the question of how do I take a decision, I think first I have to look at this aspiration levels. I think all of us have these aspirations. Keep boss, what is my aspiration? Do I want to go and be at the absolute top in the world or in India? That's one part of it, because you will be surprised that not everybody thinks of an Harvard or a Stanford even.
Right.
I'm talking about MBA. If it's MS, at least the IITians do think about going to the top ones. The second thing is, do I want to work abroad or I want to work India? At the end of the day, I think you started off, and I think maybe Nishta started off, I don't know who, the economy in India is growing crazily. In fact, we are already in PPP terms number 3 in terms of GDP. We are 7. COVID, no COVID. In fact, today's Moody's rating or yesterday's Moody's rating says we're going to go by 13.5% growth this year. It will continue to grow. Therefore, would I want to be in a state or in a country which is growing at that 8, 10, 15%, or rather than going into a Europe or a US where the growth is almost stagnant? I'm not saying there is no money. There is a money. Of course, the conversion dollars is still going to be very high. I don't know why Nishta has come back actually. Having said that, I think that's also an important decision, whether you want to work abroad or you want to work in India. Now, it's very difficult for a 22-year-old or a 24-year-old to take a decision on that. So my suggestion has always been, listen, if your aspirations are pretty good, look at the top IIMs, the XLRIs, the FMSs. Second, also look at some of the very good schools abroad, whether it is in the US, in UK, in Singapore for that matter. If you have an NUS or a SMU or even an INSEAD, which is there in Singapore and not just in Paris, or a European business schools, including some of the 2-year MBAs, which are MIM programs. So have a choice available to you, because correctly you said, Chandini, GMAT is now not only used abroad, but also some of the institutes in India too, so that it can apply.
Yes.
So keep your choices open. And once you get a final selection, I think the ROI that you can finally get, along with your aspirations and along with the purse that you have, and hopefully Jainesh and HDFC Credila will pay the money for them to do their business, for their business aspirations or MBA aspirations, you then take a decision on that. That's my thinking on it. Don't foreclose an option even before you have begun. I have always said this to students, that the goal should be an MBA. The goal should not be that I want to go abroad or be in India, ideally.
Yeah. And one, needs to also plan for finances for this well in time. So usually, Jainesh, what is it that you recommend to students? When is the right time for them to start this process of even planning finances or applying for a loan?
Both are, I think, slightly different. Applying for a loan, really, there are loan options available today, right after you get your qualifying test score. Right. So if so, as soon as you get your qualifying test score, you should apply for a loan. You may be able to get what we call a pre-approval. So essentially, it's a conditional approval on the basis of your score, some of the other parameters, etc. To be able to, when it comes to planning your finances, I'd say start as early as you can. I think perhaps at the same time as you start preparing for your applications abroad. We talked about different sources of funding. We talked about scholarship. We talked about assistantships. Assistantships is really an estimation. There's nothing much to do there. Scholarships, you'll have to find out options, prepare applications. Many scholarships actually look for applicants who apply in advance, and they have a very clear deadline or a clock associated with them. So the later you are, the farther you put it off, the lower your chances of getting that scholarship. And again, it's free money. In terms of planning for your loan during your financial planning, you can enter inputs that you're targeting. You may not have a GRE or a GMAT score. When let's say a year before your target matriculation. However, you can enter those target scores and your target universities in a loan evaluation tool, of which there are available, several options are available. We have one on our website. HDFC Credila has one on their site. You should be able to find out what loan options broadly are available. Generally speaking, if you're targeting a top, I'd say top 150, top 100 master's school, master's STEM school. So there is, you can go by US News ranking. They have a clear ranking for the US STEM master's programs. If you're applying to a top 150, you should be able to get a loan of around 30 to 40 lakh rupees in more cases than not. If you're applying for a top MBA program, if you get into a top 50 B school, you should be able to get a loan. Even a top 70 B school, you should be able to finance up to 70% of your education through one lender or the other. So if you get into a top school, essentially, financing will not be a constraint for you. If you are targeting a not so top medium ranked school, then perhaps financing will usually come from a secured education loan, which basically is a loan taken against a property that you or your parents own. That can also be a very good option for somebody who has a great degree of confidence in what they're trying to achieve in that particular B school, or in that particular course that lenders may not understand fully yet. And we've seen many examples, students going for, let's say, an LLM program at NYU. That's not something lenders today have an unsecured loan offering for, but the expected income coming out of that program is somewhere around equivalent of, in PPP terms, 20 to 30 lakh rupees per annum in India. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, interesting. And I think, it's great that these options are easily available. Unsecured loans are available. And of course, when they aren't enough, because from what I understand, unsecured loan up to 50 lakhs, that's what HDFC Credila also does, up to 50 lakhs of unsecured loans. And otherwise, even for security, there is that option for you to take a much larger amount that covers everything. And Absolutely. When we say everything, again, back to you, Jainesh, on, living costs, etc., that becomes a very large component of your overall cost. So how do you really, suggest people calculate these costs, and when is the right time for them to get into this planning?
Yep. I think, again, plan as early as possible, because then you get to look at all the other options that you can to, ultimately add up to the estimated expense. In terms of the living costs, so all the loan options, first of all, will finance your living costs. Right? So, and even something as difficult to keep track of as your grocery expenses. So most of the lenders today will essentially fill up your an international debit card or prepaid card with proceeds from your loan. So basically your loan, some part of the loan essentially gets preloaded into that card. You can simply take that card as you would a credit card in India and go and swipe it in grocery stores. So it's been the financing of all aspects of your one-way return ticket is financed, your tuition fees, books, equipment, health insurance, travel insurance, living expenses, transportation, every aspect of your education abroad can be easily financed. I'm sure this is a departure from what you might have experienced in your days, Nishta. But things have changed so much in these days. So every aspect of your education can be easily financed through a loan, if not through other sources like scholarship or self funds.
Chandni, can I ask one question to Jainesh and to you also?
Sure.
I know you are supposed to be the moderator, but I'm asking you the question. How much of, especially when you go abroad, especially US or Canada or even Australia, etc., the amount of money required will be in lakhs of rupees, probably in the 50 lakhs, or in some cases more than close to crore. How important is collateral? Or is there a possibility that HDFC Credila or anybody gives without collateral also?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So we were alluding to that. So I would say for the top 80 MBA programs, even inching up to top 100 now. For the top 150 or 200 STEM masters programs. When I say program, I'm talking about all the courses within, let's say, Arizona State University. I'm talking about schools rather than programs. And for these, unsecured loan options up to 50 lakhs are fairly easily available.
So, we ourselves at HDFC Credila have given, even in terms of percentage, if I was to mention, it's a very, very large percentage of students who've taken unsecured loans. So earlier it was, 30 odd lakhs, we increased it to 40, we now giving up to 50 lakhs of unsecured loans. Yes, I mean, it is available, and there's a combination of multiple things that we need to evaluate when we are considering who to give this to. So, not just the student profile, we need to look at what country, what course, what is the visa norm at that time. The norms are changing constantly. You need to see what is it that's happening in that particular country in terms of employability, etc. And it's a call that you take primarily on that. Of course, there is a co-borrower who is always coming on board for an education loan. So some part of the co-borrower profile, of course, is considered. But yes, these loans are available to students. However, there are students who are going for their MBAs. MBAs typically from premier institutes, cost more than a 50 lakh. And also for students who are going for undergrad overseas, those go up to a couple of crores if you're going to a premier good institute. So all those completely don't get covered as unsecured loans. Then you need to put in a security, but it's not necessary that the security needs to be equal to the amount of the loan that you're taking. There are flexibility, especially from a HDFC Credila, that are available for students, and so it makes it much more easier for them and increases the chances that they'll get a loan.
Is there an EMI moratorium that is given?
Yes, of course. So, there is a moratorium, and the complete period of education plus a 6 months grace period is typically what's provided. We encourage students to typically pay an interest, a simple interest during the period of the course, just to bring in and start the discipline of paying. Often if students don't have a job at that time, or they haven't worked previously, and this is like a fresh start for them, parents pay that simple interest. And in fact, even get tax benefits, etc. on that. So these become, very compelling reasons, in fact, why students are themselves now going and choosing an education loan. So at the beginning, like when we started, and Jainesh was also saying that this is something that they must do. That's exactly how this is. Save that money that parents have in the bank, or if people have worked and they have saved that for a rainy day. Because when there are smarter ways of financing, why dig into anything else? So yeah, that's from me. So I'll switch to my moderator seat and go to the next question, which is about, we've been talking a lot about profiles of students with great scores, and, but there are some who get a score which may not be the top notch. And So how should they really build their profile and, write their SOPs and, present it to the university so that they also have a chance of getting through? Or would you recommend that they retake the test and they wait it out? Soumya, would you want to take that?
wants to answer this first question, then I would actually add it up. Nishta?
Yeah, I'd actually want an input from all of you on this one.
Sure.
Soumya, why don't you start and then I'll follow up.
Okay, so when you say scores, Chandini, one is the academic score in college, and so when you are trying to study abroad, they don't look at your school scores. They will look only at your college scores. Okay, so one is your college scores. Another score is any of the standardized tests, whether a GMAT or a GRE. Okay, and IELTS and TOEFL, obviously you need a good score because some schools will only require good IELTS or TOEFL score. Okay, so for whatever reason, if I don't have a good academic score in college, I can back it up by a good GMAT or a GRE score. Okay, so that helps me to show my academic credentials. In case I don't get a GMAT or a GRE score, see, in master's cases, so first of all, the GMAT or GRE score is also, if you want to go to a top school in Europe, then you require a GMAT score for MBA. Otherwise, you don't require. For masters in Europe, most schools don't, or except you want to go to London School of Economics, you have to have a GRE score. So otherwise, GRE scores are not required in many places. Okay, some places in Germany will require. So it's not that without a GRE or a GMAT score, the world is closed. There are many US and Canadian universities also without a GRE score you can go or a GMAT score you can go. The issue here is that how do I prove that I am a worthy candidate towards which deserves an admission? Okay, so therein the strength of my profile comes in, the kind of interest I've shown. If I want to do a master's, the interest I've shown in the subject I want to do my master's in, what kind of projects, internship, research papers, symposiums, whatever I've done, courses, whatever I've done to showcase my profile. As far as MBA is concerned, I think if you have a WorkX, it's a good way to showcase some part of that. Even if you don't have that, so if I'm a college student, the kind of leadership roles I have had, or the kind of co-curricular, extracurricular activities I have gotten into, kind of initiatives I have taken to stand apart. Because the profile is, there are two parts of it. One is being distinctive. Other is how am I differentiating from others? Okay, so if I can showcase how I'm distinct from others, how my profile stands out in any area where I am strong in, and I can bring it up well in a relevant way, it helps. So it's not the end of the world if you don't have a good academic score. It just requires you to apply smartly, choose the schools well where that doesn't matter or that has lower relevance, choose the country options and the school options smartly, and also apply where you showcase your most your strongest points, your strongest suit in an intelligent way, where you can showcase that you are a worthy candidate. So there are ways to do that, and many students do that. And there are students who with low GRE GMAT scores also get scholarships. So it is also not it's a misnomer that you require only a high score to get a scholarship. There are students with a low scores also who are getting scholarships. So it's choosing the school and the program intelligently, which allows you to do that.
Interesting. So before I come to you on this, Nishta, okay. I'm just going to urge the students who are attending this to post their questions. So I'm just going to merge those in the conversation. So, sure. Please send your questions. You can write your questions and post it. We'll have them answered for you right away, hopefully, as many as we can. Yeah, over to you, Nishta.
Right. So I think Soumya covered a lot of it. I would just focus more on, like, if you're going for a science or engineering based degree, based master's course, I do think GPA matters a lot. And I've seen a lot of candidates with lower GPA suffering because of that, otherwise a good profile. And when you have a lower GPA, so then yes, your GRE, GMAT score starts mattering more. You want to kind of show that it's not like, your low GPA is not representative of your skills. It's not a matter of aptitude, it's just bad timing or something. And if there is a good justification of lower GPA, you should absolutely cover that in the SOP. I've seen that working out for many of our candidates. Also, school selection becomes very, very critical in those cases. When your profile is somewhere in between, your SOP starts mattering a lot more. Like, your story matters. Are you clear on your goals? Are the programs you are applying for is making sense? And can you convince the admission committee that you are the right candidate for this and not someone with maybe a slightly higher GPA? So you should, like, and this is where I think a good counselor can help you more. Because they can help you. For example, UIUC, even in pre-COVID days, is not a very GRE-centric course. They do not take GRE that seriously. So figure out courses which like make sense with your profile. Apply to a good balanced list of schools. Like, for example, even if you're an IIT and top tier college from India, everything good. If your SOP is if your SOP is poor or mediocre, I've seen those candidates getting rejects. So make sure that you apply wisely. You have a balanced list. Again, don't go purely by ranks, that because my profile is looking so good on paper, I'm going to just apply to top 20 schools. That's usually not a good strategy. So apply to a good mix of schools, hedge your bets. And I think even with mediocre profiles, I've seen decent admits. Matters a lot on school selection. And lastly, I would say this, I have seen candidates going to top tier, like A-grade schools in US, and landing a average job later on. And I've seen people going to star candidates going to grade B schools, maybe because of like their profile was not as good on paper, and smashing it, like landing into Tesla and Google. So US that way is a very meritocratic culture. That's what I like about it. It's not the end of the road. If your profile right now is not so bad, go to a school, build your skills, and just hustle it out, and you can still land very, very good companies there. So I would say keep your hopes up, but yes, apply wisely. Don't be blinded by ranks and all those things that if I don't get top 20, I'm not going to go. That is something for you to decide.
Great, thanks. Would you like to add to that? And also about, since she was touching upon profile building, SOPs, also about that as to what are the nuances that they can look at specifically while building their profile and writing their SOPs.
Very good. In fact, if people who are listening to me and listening to all of us, when they talk about a profile, especially when you go abroad, I think if I can use 6 points that one has to look at. The first one is, of course, especially in the MBA space, but can be very useful for all the spaces, is can you demonstrate leadership? That's one very important profile sheet that you can think of. And then we will club it into a SOP later. Second is, have you done any kind of initiatives? Now, leadership and initiatives are very closely related to each other. So if you can showcase some kind of initiatives that you have taken, whether it's school, college, social network, at home, work, whatever that is. Third is, especially both technology, sciences, as well as MBA, have you showcased certain innovation skills? So leadership, initiative, innovation. In addition to these three, these are the three big points. Impact of whatever you have done, both qualitatively and quantitatively, can you showcase that impact? It could be as simple as taking care of, let's say, in COVID situation, for example, I am trying to, because all students are sitting at home, is there any way in which you can kind of help some students who couldn't go to school, didn't have their let's say Wi-Fi networks, etc., and help them to learn through some kind of innovation in some kind of initiative that they can take. Last but not the least, as a career, you need to look at a complete progression. It has to be a continuous progression that you are showcasing as far as your career or a profile is concerned. All these 5 can get added to your personal attributes. Somebody was asking extracurricular activities kya hota hai. Extracurricular activities could be a part of these things: your sports, your culture, your participation, your positions of responsibility, right from probably school, but definitely in college and the latest work that you have done. But when it comes to SOP, statement of purpose, it also looks at one very, very important thing: is why you are doing what you're doing. So when I look at when anybody talks about a SOP or a statement of purpose, it's basically storytelling. It's about your story that you're trying to tell. You know, you're selling your story. How do I sell my story? There are certain aspects of me, all the 5, 6 things that I've talked about. See, my scores are not a story that is there in my number, but to get that score or less score, even let's say I would have got a very less score, as Shamya was saying or Nishta was saying, if I come from a very rural background where I first got into an English medium school only in 11th standard, that's a great story to talk about probably. Or I come from various countries. So a SOP is basically selling your story, which has all these aspects, showcasing that at every point of time or every period of time in your life, you have showcased some of these aspects. As long as you can show that GRE or a GMAT score, for that matter an SAT score at the UG level or ACT score at the undergraduate level, will be very, very important. That's a hygiene factor. But beyond that hygiene factor, I think this becomes a very, very important aspect of selection.
And Janish, even for you, from your personal experience point of view, you've, studied, worked overseas. Would you want to add any thoughts?
I think the other panelists have covered this so comprehensively. There isn't much to add, quite frankly. But the only thing at a framework level, very rightly captured by I think all the panelists earlier. Even if your scores, the quantifiables in your profile are seeming quote unquote weak, there are other opportunities to strengthen them through your SOP by highlighting other aspects of your work experience to show how well you gel. And there's not all, as Nishta mentioned, the ultimate goal is whatever you decide for yourself, be it professional success, it does not need for you to get into a top 10 college. There are innumerable successful stories of students who have gone into something of a 100th rank college and done really, really well there and built a solid career out of it, right? So it does not matter. So that both the essentially paths are there. Use other aspects to strengthen your profile and target all range of colleges. Wherever you get into, do your best to build out your career. I leave it there.
Right. No, it's really interesting. I think it's all about, in a way, building your own brand, your personal brand, when you're putting your SOP together and putting your resume there. So multiple aspects there. I don't think there is one perfect story there that everybody is looking for. You can create your own and put it together. And I think our panelists have really comprehensively covered this aspect. Some questions. Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
So I think one aspect one needs to do is, most of us have online presence. Most students have an online presence. So when you are applying, and you would obviously want to showcase your online presence. So some of these things which I write as a, whether it's the distinctiveness, what is distinct about me, or as Art said, what is diverse about me. I went to a school in class 11. So distinctiveness, diversity, and my passion or interest, if I can able to put it in my online, in my profile, which I can showcase online. So it's a very simple thing. Show versus telling. Can I show vis-a-vis just telling about it? Okay. So show versus tell. How can I showcase? And online and today's world, obviously all students, especially the students we are addressing, have online presence. So it's very important to showcase that. Okay. Not only tell about that, not only write about that, but show. and that is one
Right.
where one needs to spend time and energy behind that.
Right. So also in terms of intake, when we see, when we applying to universities, there are different intakes. So like a spring and a fall typically for a US. So is there any such preference that a student should have, and is there a benefit of going for one over the other in comparison? Nishta, would you want to answer that specifically for the US, because you counseling students?
Sure. That is something we have written in detail about on the blog as well, because we do get a lot of queries. I think the only downside of spring is that not all universities have spring intake. So the choice of basically the options available to you to apply for are lesser in spring. Another thing is that you cannot do your summer internship if you start your school in spring, because for CPT you have to get a CPT, which is what you need to do a summer internship outside your school in US. You have to be in US for at least 9 months. So only people who can start in fall session are eligible for doing a summer internship in the following summer. So someone who's starting in spring can only do summer internship in the next summer. So that's another factor to be considered. Apart from that, there are also some myths like that the good courses are not available, or recruitment is going to be impacted or not. I don't think those are as much true. And especially if you are very, very if you're running short of time and you just want to go as soon as possible and spring is the next semester available, some of our candidates have gone on to spring and they have managed well as well. So just see how much is internship important to you. And if you're getting your desired course in a spring intake, then why not? I don't see a very big downside to it.
Interesting. So what I'm going to also start doing is now just asking and merging in questions which are coming from the students. So we have a question here where somebody's asking us, how to start a career in data science without a BTech degree, specific one. Is that possible?
Yeah, I can take that one.
Absolutely.
Much
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, so I think one of my...
Dennis, go ahead and take it.
Thank you so much.
So there is like a big yes, of course, it's possible for this particular question by everyone unanimously. So yes, go ahead and build that on for yourself. UK and USA where colleges are better, which is a place basically where there are better colleges for pursuing MA Economics honors. Aks, would you want to take that on?
I've actually replied to that student already on chat.
Okay.
Frankly, I mean, there are absolutely brilliant institutes in both US and UK as far as economic honors are concerned. In fact, LSE is #1 in the world itself, the London School of Economics, and of course, Cambridge, Oxford, and probably a lot others are there. US, if you look at almost all the economists are from the US in that sense, and the top 50 schools or top 20, 30 schools are very, very good in economics. So I would really say that it doesn't matter. Ideally, if you are clearly thinking of M&A in economics or MS in economics, depending on where you want to go, apply to both the schools, whichever you get, and whoever hopefully gives you some kind of scholarship, you should take it. Simple.
As an extension to another question that I'd asked you about the GMAT, somebody's asking, is it really important to go by GMAT or direct admission is also good?
This is exactly what I'm saying. Except in the COVID era right now, where most of the top schools have suspended their GMAT requirements, it is very unlikely for a top school to take students without GMAT or without a GRE. So my sense here has always been that if a school is not considering GMAT or a GRE, very likely it is not in the top. Now, if you don't have that ability to get a good score, ready to settle for the slightly lower number, lower ranked institutes, and build up your profile after going there, then you can choose either. But typically GMAT as a consideration is I think kinds of gives you the feeling that okay, if there is a GMAT requirement, moti you can say that okay, the institute that you are even looking forward to is a decent institute. That's my take. Nishta, you may want to add a value to that.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
So, Soumya, we have a question here that is doing a diploma in a foreign language going to give us an upper hand? What is your take on that? Because I guess, especially for those who are going to a Germany, etc., this must be specific for them.
Yeah, you see, if you are going to, let's say, if you're going to Germany, there you have to also look at the particular university's admission criteria. Some will require a certain level of proficiency, some will not. Okay, so if it is required a German proficiency, you must have. That's a requirement. Okay, but even if you're German, even if it is not, and you want to go to Germany, ultimately you want to get into internship and probably a job later. So knowing the German language is, I think, a very, very logical thing to do. So on the other hand, if you are talking of just knowing a language, see, as we were just talking of how to build your profile. So if I have learned a language, and that kind of showcases that I'm a person looking out for newer stuff and trying to build my personal brand, that helps. It definitely helps. But as a requirement, it will be most required in places like Germany or some countries in the Europe. But there's not a requirement. It helps.
Aks, for you, there's a question. How much do you think there's a growing demand of interest or PG diploma in data science, specifically in India? And also if it's a safe option is what they're asking to pursue this in India.
Business analytics, data sciences, artificial intelligence, machine learning, these are some things over the last 3 to 5 years, in fact 6-7 years, I would say, have really become very useful. And the number of people who have certain ability in this area or experience in this area are very little. Going forward, as we go into the next 2020s and further late into in the early 2030s also, my bet is a lot of decision making is going to be based on data. Therefore, understanding of data and therefore of data analytics will become a very important skill that one has to pick up, whether or not they do an MBA, whether or not they do anything else, especially in the management side. So in that sense, I'm saying, yes, it makes sense to do a diploma. Now, whether you have to do a diploma to do that or learn the skill when you do an MBA in any of the top schools is a iffy kind of thing. It can only add value as a certification for people. But is it critical? I don't think so. It is critical, at least as yet, in terms of growing in your organization, because at the end of the day, there are data scientists who help the managers to take decisions at the end of the day. So data science typically, or data scientists typically, are back-end people who help the front-end people to take decisions in that sense.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit. So I think, and also alluding to the previous question that there was, can people from non-engineering backgrounds get into data science? Right? So it's, as a recruiter, and this is what I've seen my friends who are recruiting for data science roles as well, and that folks are looking for not just degree or a diploma in data science, but your portfolio of work. It's become very similar in terms of how we recruit for development roles, so tech development roles. I'd like to look at somebody's GitHub profile before hiring them for a tech role. Similarly, I'd like to look at somebody's Kaggle profile, how well you've done in your, problems posted on Kaggle. Do you have any ranks there? What was your score relative to your peers? What percentile were you able to attain? So hardcore results, because there are so many avenues available for you to showcase how well versed you are in the techniques of data science. I think a degree for me as a recruiter is really secondary, or a diploma is secondary. It's the portfolio of work is primary.
So there's a specific question here that is waiting 5 years to complete CA before going for MBA worth it, or would the 5 years experience working give me more benefit? Like, should the person wait?
Why would you do 5 years of a CA actually, unless
3 years of apprenticeship, I think.
3 years of apprenticeship, if you finish your degree, you don't even need that.
Yeah.
In that sense of the word. So the point is, if you're 12th class passed and then you want to do an apprenticeship and then do a CA, it's fine. That's almost like doing a degree and 2 more years of CA. Frankly, it doesn't matter. If somebody is very keen, see, chartered accountancy is a different part of the whole of finance and accounts as compared to an MBA, which is more to do with finance as such. If you have a CA and if you also do an MBA, it will definitely add value to your entire portfolio. It's like you're taking care of the statutory requirement side, understanding of the account side, as well as the finance side, finances, funding, investment, and growth kind of things. So I don't think you need to add here, but I realize the question there is, should I work for 5 years instead of doing CA? That is a real question. And to my mind, that question, if you have 5 years experience in a relevant field and do an MBA, a 1-year executive MBA from a top school, it will be definitely worth it. If you get to do a CA properly, but without experience, you're doing immediately to an MBA, people are going to question you, why did you waste 5 years of a CA in the first place? So, it's very important to figure out why you are doing an MBA, if you want to do an MBA, while you're unnecessarily wasting 5 years on a CA in the first place. That's my take on this. Shama, you want to add something on this?
No, I think you covered it, and it's ultimately. So, what kind of role I also want to do? Do I want to do a accounting kind of a role, or want to do a managerial kind of a role? I think that also is why I do finance, why I study commerce, but I can have different kinds of outlook to where my career goes. So it's left to you what you want to do. And CA it's a very intensive program. So you need to get into that with the right intentions. It's a very intense program. So it's not there's no either or. It's about dedicating yourself to what you think is right to you.
Right. There's a similar but question about countries, which country to go to. So the question, Nishtha, is that university, sorry, I've just scrolled up. I've lost the question. The University of Munich, Germany provides a 2-year MSc Economics. Should I prefer it over universities in USA and UK due to financial reasons?
Yeah,
Nishtha, would you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think financial factor is a big thing because most of the courses in Germany are highly subsidized by the government. Some of them end up like you just pay a bare minimum living cost and tuition is entirely free, and you can even start earning while you are studying. So that makes it very easy for people who have any sort of financial constraints, and it makes sense for them to consider Germany. Another thing to consider Germany over something like US might be visa considerations. Like if you do not want to go through that whole H-1B lottery tension, then also you can consider countries like Canada and Germany. So I think it's your personal preference. In terms of course, I have the people who have gone to Germany have reported actually the courses are quite intense and very technical in Germany as well. So I don't think you need to worry about the course content as much. It's more about your personal preference, that what are the factors for consideration for you, what are the financial constraints, language, are you like okay to start learning German language and start working there, and how much are you dependent on the visa system. If you are very set on immigrating or settling abroad, then are you willing to take that risk with the US visa system? So those are the things I would talk to some experienced counselor.
Right. So something about the duration of course. So most universities in the US have a 12+4 requirement to apply for masters, but our UG course in India is for 3 years. Is there a way to become eligible for such universities?
Can I quickly decide? Yeah, it's absolutely.
Yes.
Do a 1 or 2 year diploma course. We have had candidates who have done that after a 3-year bachelor's course, and they have actually gone on to. So that girl cracked like Columbia CS degree, and she had an admit from Northwestern CS as well. So it's absolutely doable. Do good projects, build your profile, and write a very, very good SOP. It's completely doable.
This
So another,
3-year
sorry,
thing,
you
there
want to
are
add
many
something,
schools.
Soumya?
Yeah, there are many schools while you don't need to do this 1-year stuff also. So 10 plus 2 plus 3 is acceptable in many schools. So you just need to see the criteria of the school, and in many cases, there are so many students who go from India specifically from the 10 plus 2 plus 3 education system. They are aware of it. So the US is pretty flexible. The most of the issue comes in if it comes to Canada. So Canada is a little bit inflexible about it. US flexibility is much higher these days. So you can write to the university, and if it's a grade A university like the Delhi University, I think where most cases waivers.
Is so, you know, since you're talking of Canada, there's something around, you know, is profile building different from country to country? So do universities in different countries look at it in a different way? Aks, would you want to take that on?
I think they do actually. But having said that, broadly, whether it is US, whether it is Canada, or for that matter UK, in general, even in India, I think the profile that, in fact, I shared in that sense of the word will become very, very important. The difference is in the weightage that is given to profile versus scores and academic scores and work experience. You know, the quartet, if I look at it, profile, which includes all the things that we discussed, to your academic scores of your UG or whatever you have done till then, your work experience, relevant work experience, and your scores, which are your test scores like a GRE, GMAT. So when you look at this 4 quartet, a US probably will give the highest for a profile. So therefore, it can go up to 40-45% of your final selection. Probably, maybe even Shamo and Nishtha can help that. But in some places, that 40% could be only 10% or 20%, and the rest of the 3 will become your 70-80% of your discussion. So the profile doesn't change. The weightage of the profile changes in country to country in that sense.
Right. Something about
So if
funding.
I may add there, yeah,
Yes.
so we get a lot of this interest in Canada these days, okay, because of the obvious reasons of PR and all of that. But Canada, with the increased number of applicants, and so that's increased competition, A, and B is obviously the number of schools in Canada are not as much as the US, okay. And if we talk of the top schools, the numbers are limited as compared to the US. So it's a competition in Canada. So academics plays a large part. If you want to go to Canadian schools, you want to go to good Canadian schools, they tend to be a little more demanding on academics than they were earlier, and that's because of the large interest which we are seeing in terms of students wanting to go to Canada. So your academics, your undergraduate academic, GRE, GMAT scores, all of that is being little they're little hard on that these days.
And something about funding, Janish, students are asking if, you know, they need to show proof of funds to university during application time. So can they avail of a education loan sanction and show that as proof of funds? Does that work?
Absolutely does. And actually, most of the universities have done away with the requirement. However, there are a few that still have that still want to see proof of financial ability at the time of application. You'll see most of the universities actually ask for that after they give you a conditional offer or an offer admission. However, for those universities who do want to see that requirement, we discussed very briefly earlier about the availability of pre-approved loans. You can actually get a loan on the basis of your entrance test score, be it GRE, GMAT, or IELTS, and some other parameters. Of course, it's not just a single variable equation there. But looking at all the other parameters, we can approve a loan even before you get an admit, and that can be used as all the universities will accept that as proof of funding.
Yeah. In fact, I'll again leave my moderator seat for this particular one, because this is something very close to HDFC Credila, because we were actually the first ones who introduced this concept of a pre-approved loan, and the whole reason was that there is a chicken and egg situation. You need to plan your finances, and if you're only going to go and apply to a bank or be allowed to apply to a bank after you've got your admit, it's a little too late, because you may be losing opportunity to apply to the right universities, or you may already have dropped a plan and maybe working for a couple of extra years to get that fund collected. And that's where this whole concept got introduced, where we said, come with your scores as soon as you have them and get your loan evaluation. And once you have your sanction letter, use it as a solvency letter to show proof of funds to universities. And over time, universities are in fact recognizing that as one of the most, trustworthy, I would say, document of proof of funds, because it's almost like a guarantee that there will be money coming if there's an admission coming. And it, and universities understand that fee payment will be done in time because there's a financial institution involved, etc. So all this is very well accepted there. Another question again on the, we touched upon tax somewhere. So I think the question is about understanding tax, that who can avail of taxes. Janish, would you want to answer this?
Sure. So either the student or their parents, one party can avail of the income tax benefit of paying the interest portion of the education loan. This is available for as long as 8 years. So there are a few interesting things about this, just to make sure that folks are aware. Number one, this benefit, which comes under Section 80E, is not included in the regular investment. There's no investment cap associated with this benefit, which makes it very different from the interest benefit that you get from paying your home loan, which is capped under the 1.5 lakhs or 2 lakhs if you include the NPS tax benefit that you can get under Section 80C. However, this Section 80 has no bar at all. It's over and above that 2 lakhs, and it has no upper cap. So all the interest that you pay towards your education loan, as long as your loan is from approved institutions, so banks and HDFC Credila, you can avail 100% of your interest that you pay as income tax deductible. Both you and your parents, one party can do that. It's interchangeable as well, so you could potentially, your parents could pay your interest while you study for a couple of years, and once you start earning, then you could potentially avail that. Now, of course, keep in mind that if you're in the US and you're resident in the US, filing taxes there, then you cannot avail that, because this doesn't apply in the US tax code. However, if you do return to India after your education for, let's say, even a couple of years down the line, or then you should be able to avail of this benefit at that point in time.
Right. So, thanks for this.
I
think
both of you again, Chandini, before you finish the question, again, I'll make you less of a moderator. On the interest, you get the tax waiver, but on the principal, you don't get it, right? For any loan?
No, it's on the entire interest amount that you get the waiver. Yeah.
This is
Which works out really well. I mean, just to give an example there and for everybody to understand how this works, if you really look at taxes, in India, I think the best taxes, tax exemption is on education loan. And how that typically works is that if you are, for example, getting a loan at 11% and you fall in the 30% tax bracket, and technically you're getting an education loan at 8%. So there are tax calculators. There's one on our website also, and so one can just go and see what is the kind of saving that you can make, and it's amazing. I mean, most people are not even aware the kind of benefit that you can get there. So it's really interesting for everyone to understand that. And yeah, so I mean, we've had a very, very interesting session. There's a lot that all of you have covered and answered. Absolutely enriching one. Last thing from all of you, if you could just give a last few tips or anything specific that you want to convey to students from your side. We can go one by one and have a round of tips and advice that you can give to them? So we'll start ladies first. Nishtha, with you.
I'm just going to elaborate on something that Soumya said earlier, which I also strongly believe in, is that, like, look at education is not an expense, it's an investment. And if you make the right investment for the right reasons, I think it pays off wonderfully well. I've seen that in my case. I am from a very middle class family. Like, I took an education loan myself when I went to UIUC, because even though it's a public university, it had a hefty tuition fee, and I did not get any scholarship at the time of admission. But I got one when I landed there, and I did not have to avail the loan. But I think dream for the right reasons, and go for it. Because of these education loans and all, I think it has become more accessible to more people in India, which is a very wonderful thing. So actually a big shout out to Chandini and Jainesh both for making that dream possible for so many students. So I think good luck to all the students out there, and I'm sure, like, go and rock it. Life is too short to, like, be in an unfulfilled career. So go for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Soumya, how about you?
I think one critical thing is the planning part of it. So a lot of times we see students coming very close to deadlines, and they're still unprepared, and they're still figuring out what to do. So and especially if you take a GRE or a GMAT, so these have validity of 5 years. Okay, so if you are since all students are in the DU, whether they're in the first year, second year, third year, the earlier they take the GRE to GMAT, and they can do away with that, because giving a competitive exam when you are working full time is always a pain. Okay, so if you can quickly prepare and the course are valid for 5 years, at least you are done with that part of the business. Okay, then you consider building your academic profile and other profile. But if you want to study abroad or anywhere, even in India, if you want to higher studies, so make a definite roadmap, and time yourself well, so that you're not late in your application process. Your scores are there by the times. Your recommendation letters are there in place, because they are very important in some cases. And you don't make a bad job out of ASOP. So it requires time and effort, and so timing it well, planning it well, talking to people who have done it, maybe taking some expert help, all that helps. But it requires a bit of planning, rather than doing it little on a hurried way, and then you are late for everything, good courses, scholarships, everything.
Right. As you have had a very interesting journey yourself, what would you want to convey to the students?
I have a very simple thing to convey to every student who is listening to it. First and foremost, friends, this is not a rat race. You don't have to do it tomorrow morning. Like both Nishtha has said, Soumya has said, all of you have said, you can plan. A career is 35, 40 years of your life after your 2022 of graduation, which means to say a year here or a year there won't make a iota of difference in your lives. What will make a difference in your lives is the kind of a fear of missing out, the FOMO that this entire generation unfortunately has. I would say chill a little, plan better, trust yourself, focus, commitment are required, guys, for anything in this world. Even if you want to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend, thoda sa focus chahiye life mein, right? You need to put in effort. Likewise, career thoda zyada hai, hopefully. Therefore, you might need to put in that sincere, serious effort. There are enough and more people who are there ready to help you, whether it is Nishtas of the world trying to help in a counseling, or the Chandinis and the Jaineshus who can help you to plan your money and get the money required to get you where you want, or a Shama or me, both of us spending a lot of time with the students trying to get you into the GREs, the GMATs, the CATs, or whatever exams that you guys want to prepare. I think there are, and it's not just this group, too many people available for you to get the right decisions. All I would say is aim very high. You will achieve that. All the very best.
Thank you. Jainesh, how about you?
Right. I think
So
the other
I'd
panel.
like you to add a little bit about your personal journey also in this, because I know there are interesting facts there that we're able to learn from.
Sure, I'll try to few it. I think all the panelists have actually covered the key aspect. And one recurring theme that the students might have heard is plan. Start early, plan. Don't rush into it. And I'd like to repeat that at the sake of boring you all, but at the risk of boring you all, but it really is important. Start early, start today. At least start thinking about it. We are not saying that just get started with the actual work, but start planning and strategizing about it. Soumya mentioned how last minute deadlines can be a pain, especially when trying to write quality SOPs. I remember I applied for my B school before I started Gyandhan. I got into a couple of B schools, but it was a huge pain actually taking the GMAT on by studying on the weekend, and last minute rush to actually write up the SOPs by remember waking up night. It was very similar to JEE preparation days, putting those SOPs together. So starting ahead of time really helps. I'm sure the quality of the SOPs suffered as a result of it. So even though it got done and some results came my way, but it could have been better had I planned better. So that was an error on my part. Something for students not to do. And start early and plan.
Great. I think this is absolutely fantastic to hear all your stories, your personal stories that you've merged in there. And over this session, I think years of experience that you've capsulated so simply in such an enriching way for all attendees. We've actually had a full house today. I can see everybody has been there beginning to end, hearing every word of that you all have been advising them on. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking this time out from your busy schedules. I know it's been one of the longest sessions we've had. Thank you for this time and for all your valuable inputs on this. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Chandini.
Thank you so much, Chandini. It was so very conductive.
Really nice to be with all these guys. Wonderful.
Yes.
To meet.
Yes.
And
thank you
all the
of you.
students
I'm
too.
going
I
to
think.
connect.
Thank you.